Welcome. I'm your host, Cindy Watson, and today we are going to be talking with AnnMichelle Hart about how passion gives purpose in the practice. AnnMichelle was actually a business owner before she was a lawyer, and in shifting to become a lawyer, she knew that she wanted flexibility with her own hours and being able to control her own pricing. So she now runs a very successful estate planning firm representing clients of all ages, income levels, and ethnicities, which I just love. So creating an estate plan that reflects the client's needs. So it is great to have you here, AnnMichelle. Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what made you want to make that switch to pursue a career as an attorney.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate being here. I learned early on when I was in sales, I lost several jobs because they were being shipped overseas. And it was getting harder and harder as I got older to find sales jobs that would support my level of expertise and skill. And it suddenly dawned on me one day I was going to have to figure out how to use my brain or I was going to get aged out of a job. So I went back to school. First, I studied paralegal and discovered I really enjoyed it. And then from there, it was just a matter of a small step to go to law school.
Wow. Well, kudos for you. That takes guts actually to make that
It
kind
did.
of decision. So I gotta love it. Speaking of, we talk about rekindling passion. You obviously were willing to follow your passion very early. I love that. So why did you want to start your own firm? I sort of alluded a little bit to, I know that the hours and some control, but I'd love to dig a little more on that. What made you want to start and why is flexibility so important?
Sure. I knew going into law school, having worked for companies and then worked for myself, I always had a side job doing wedding coordinating while I had a full-time job. And so the job was for the very straightforward, do this, do that, wrote, robot thing. But the wedding coordinating allowed me to be creative. And that was where I got my inspiration from and my sanity. And so as I went to law school, I realized very quickly on, I am not a candidate for big law.
Yeah.
And so, right. So I knew that was scratch off the table.
Yeah.
And I always knew I was going to go solo. I just didn't know when. And so as I got out of law school, I tried to find a job in my preferred area of law, which is intellectual property.
Oh,
Unfortunately, I live in Seattle. I have a soft background. I don't have hard sciences, and
yeah.
nobody will hire an IP attorney here unless they have hard sciences. And
Interesting.
so I ended up doing auto accident cases for a couple of years. And that really, I'm good at it and I like it. However, it wasn't my passion. And I knew at some point I wanted to get back into doing something directly one-to-one with people where I could control my schedule. And it so happened that estate planning was the perfect vehicle for that.
Yeah, not a first choice for most people for passion.
It wasn't. It wasn't mine either. I never could wrap
Yeah.
my head around when to do estate planning. So I have a mentor who really got in and explained how that, and it suddenly made sense.
Yeah. Well, and I'd love you to dig in two things that you said that really tweaked for me there, Michelle. One is about passion, and why is that so important, and how were you able to find it? And then also separately, love you to address this idea about estates, how we can find passion in anything. Like estates wasn't your first choice, but you were able to find the passion in it. So I'd love if you could tie
Mhm.
those together for us.
Sure, absolutely. So the reason for how you find your passion is you really need to figure out what you like and what you're good at. And sometimes that's trying a whole lot of different things. My parents let us fail as kids, which was the best thing
Mm,
ever. We weren't allowed to quit something, but when the term ran out, we could stop doing it. So let's say, for example, we had ballet lessons. We were in for a year, discovered not a really great dancer, so that was out. Despite my middle name being Grace, I wasn't. Um, and and so but I tried a lot of different things and I like artistic and creative things. And I like being able to talk to people and pull out of them. And which starting to get into the weddings, pull out of people what their ideas are and what their dreams are and making them come to life. So
Yeah.
for me, moving into estate planning, it's almost exactly the same thing. I get to find out what's in you. And that actually fuels me because I want to find out more about you. I want to find out what makes you tick. And in doing so, I can create a plan that works for you to meet all of your goals. And that makes me happy.
Nice. And you really, I think, hit on a couple of key aspects of that passion and purpose. And one is creativity. So it sounds like that was something that you had in your wedding planning business on the side. And how were you able to uncover that in estates?
Well, as I said before, I couldn't wrap my head in law school around when you would do an estate plan, and I never really understood how to do it. And so I had a mentor come and say, well, we're doing it wrong for this today. It
Mm,
worked back in the old days. People were in the same village. They knew who the attorney was.
yeah.
When you died, everybody went to that attorney to get your estate plan, and nothing really changed. It was really stayed. But we are so movable now and we have so many things and we don't stay in one place. That became untenable. I'm working for an attorney right now where I'm taking all of his old wills that he's kept the originals and trying to get them back to people. It is a daunting task. And I
I
knew
bet.
before I even started that I was never going to keep the originals. And so now we realize that the laws change, people's motivations change for making an estate plan. So you really need to start where you are. Ideally, I'd like to take an 18-year-old because they need some documents right away. And then work them as you get older and your views on the world change and your goals change the estate plan every 2 to 3 to 5 years, depending on what's happening in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I love that bringing that creativity to the practice can make such a difference. And you touched on not wanting big law firms. Can you speak a little bit to that? I don't disagree with you. I'm just interested in your perspective. What was it about that you knew was not going to be able to allow you to practice with purpose?
Well, it wasn't the money because the money would have been nice. I would have loved to have paid off my student loans in several years.
Yes.
But I knew, having run my own business before, that I'm a really terrible employee. And so I wanted to find at least a smaller firm where I could discuss. A lot of times I don't want to know just a little thing here, go do this job. I want to know where it fits in the picture. I need the puzzle. I have the puzzle piece, but I want to know where it fits. And so you don't get that in big law. They give you a little task to do and you don't know where it fits. You don't know how important it is. And you don't get the impact that it makes if you make a mistake.
Yeah.
Where if you're in a smaller firm, you can ask questions about, where does this fit? Where is this going to? How does this help the client? And smaller firms at least allow you to be able to grasp the enormity of what you're working on.
Yeah. And it's an interesting perspective. I hadn't thought of that before, but it's tough to be on purpose when you don't know what your purpose is, when you're one little cog and you don't see the bigger purpose. It's hard to get
Exactly.
passionate about that. That's a great
Right.
answer. And the other thing you touched on that I wanted to circle back to, because I thought it was so important. I love that you said that your parents allowed you to fail. And
Yes.
I encourage people to have what I call fail-abrations, right? That we need to be able to celebrate our failures, recognizing that that's the only way forward. And I'd love you
Mhm.
to tell a little bit more about what impact that had on you, what positive and or negative, what a difference
Um,
it made being able to fail.
there's so much about the wedding business that I use in the law today. And one of the things that I learned from my parents about being able to fail was when I went into a wedding and something didn't go right, I'd call, well, that was an experience I'm never going to have again. And so I started training other consultants on how not to make the things that I had done incorrectly wrong. And I even talked to my clients, my customers about, something's going to go wrong at the wedding. It's my job to make sure it's not major. But I learned about halfway through my career in the weddings that there's a definition for experience, and it has been my mantra ever since. And it is experience is what you get when you didn't get what you wanted.
That's great.
And right. I mean, if you think about it, it's really heavy, but really it's true. You need to be able to think about, I'm going to do this the best to my ability, but don't underestimate the value of learning something in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great mantra to live by as well, because it's all about allowing ourselves, don't beat ourselves up, which we tend to do, right? Oh, things didn't go well. And we stew about it and we beat ourselves up about it, as opposed to holding it up and saying, all right, let me explore this. What went wrong? What can I do differently? What are the lessons here? That is such a profound shift in how to look at those failures. How were you
Right.
able to bring that to your practice, do you think? Your law practice?
Uh, I don't expect perfection. And I know a lot of attorneys, especially the younger ones that I went to school with, were about being perfect. They had to dress perfect. They had to look perfect. They had to have perfect clothes, perfect car. And I'm like, honey, there's no perfect,
Yeah.
right? You're going to have to get away from that really quickly. And I think some of them that went into big law soon realized being perfect is soul crushing. You can't ever attain it. And they want more perfection and more perfection, and you can't get there. So
Yes.
what I try to do is I'm working with undergrad students from my alma mater. I'm working with law students from my alma mater. I also pick up other students because I went to school out of state. I also pick up law students that are brand new to the law profession here in Washington, where I then mentor them and try to express upon them that there's different things for different places. I was asking an intern last spring to write articles for me, and knowing they were going to be put up on the web, I told them that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for some plain language, explain this, not in legalese. And he came
Yeah.
back a little stiff writing, and then he underbilled. And I said, first of all, it didn't take you an hour to read and digest that one, because it took me more than an hour to read and digest it. And I know you didn't. I know you took longer.
Yeah.
And I said, don't ever go into another law firm where you don't put down the exact time that that you worked.
Agree.
You let me, the boss, decide what I'm going to charge the client or not. don't you undercharge. Don't you do that, because he's going to cut the bill down and he's going to think you can do it like this. And then you're going to get a
Mhm.
project you can't.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Second is that you're talking to the wrong language. If you're trying to explain something, he was too stilted. I said, you need to say that for your briefs. The judge understands, and you need to talk that language with the judge, but your clients don't get that. You need to, I don't mean to dumb it down, but I mean, talk their language.
Yeah. Yeah. So important. And kudos to you for doing mentoring. I think it is such an important thing to give back to that next generation to help make the practice and the profession, frankly, the best that it can be. What would be some of the top tips that you would give to people that you're mentoring about the practice of law and how to be able to be more purposeful and to be able to practice on purpose, find those better ways to practice?
I think the one of the things I try to impress upon them is, look, I have a mentor too, and sometimes you need to keep on track with your mentor because they are busy people too, and if you want their mentorship and if you want their help, you need to keep the relationship alive as much as they do. So don't ghost them. It is really hard to find good mentors, and if for some reason you just either grow out of them or you don't hit it off with them, go find somebody else. It
Mm.
doesn't even have to be in your state. It's just somebody. I even tell some of mine, if you just want somebody to call and cry on my shoulder and complain about the boss, I'll take that. I have no problem with that, because I'm not working for your boss and I won't work for your boss.
Yeah.
So I'm a safe place for you. Instead of venting to your coworkers, you come vent to me, right?
Yeah.
And so I help them figure out how not to have a problem at work, bringing some of those off work issues into the job.
That is so good. I love that. I wish we'd met last week because I actually run a clubhouse room called For Lawyers Only, and the subject was about mentors and sponsors. How do you get them? Why do you need them? How do you know when you got the right one? So you would be
Mhm.
perfect for that. Now, I know that you planned on to learn how to run a law firm as you made that transition, but the pandemic apparently had you have to accelerate that plan. I'd love you to tell us a little bit about that.
It did. Surprise, surprise. Uh, I had a 2 to 5 year plan. Now, from where we are sitting right now, it would be another year from now. So I was working for an auto accident firm. And right as the pandemic hit, of course, everything shut down, especially here in Washington. We had 2 weeks to curb the spread of and it didn't work. And so longer it went on and longer it went on, less people were driving. We're working from home. Guess what? No auto accident cases. So I was the last one in. I was the first one to be shown the door,
Uh-huh.
and they gave me 30 days so I could get the notes and things in order. What they didn't realize is I was spending my time getting my notes in order at work, and then off work, I was getting oh my God, I need a website. I needed this. I had a list of things I already started looking at, but I hadn't put into place. So I'm like, push play, push play, push play, just pushing everything, and oh, I don't have time to decide. I'll just pick that now and I'll fix it later. Right. And so I had to get something off the ground. So the day that I left, the next day I announced I opened my firm. Um,
Wow.
right. So I had 30 days to push play.
Yeah.
And it was like doing 90 miles an hour on the freeway. But but I've survived, and I'm a year and a half in, and it's been a good ride so far.
Well, congrats. That's pretty exciting and quite the roller coaster ride by the sounds of
Oh my
it.
gosh.
And it's interesting. I hadn't really thought about, I mean, I've thought of other aspects. You really don't contemplate the ripple effects of something like the pandemic or many things in life. Like the fact that people weren't driving means no auto claims, which means
Right.
those law firms. I mean,
Right.
the ripple effects can be so
Well,
profound.
and I want to point out too, I already had plan B in place.
Yeah.
And I caution people all the time. I don't care how long you think you're going to stay where you are. You need an exit strategy. You
Mm.
never know what's going to happen. And I can tell from, I was working at a office products store warehouse back in the 80s and early 90s. And company was doing really great. The husband and wife had owned 2 companies. They had split. She had one company, he had the other. All of a sudden they came to us about 4 years into my employment and said, we have to shut down. And I was like, what? Well, it turns out the ex-husband was embezzling funds out of her
Oh,
company and basically killed her company. We all got laid off. Did not expect that to happen, was not planned, wasn't prepared for it. And after that, it's always been, what am I going to do so as I got my last law firm job, I already had plan B in place, and
well,
I was
this
doing the
is
training.
making perfect sense now because having that
Right.
plan B and what you just described is actually such a beautiful fit for estate planning because we often, myself included, I'm embarrassed to say, kept procrastinating. We had 3 kids in 3 years, started late and made up for lost time, and we
Right.
couldn't agree on who the guardian would be, and we kept putting it off and putting it off.
Yeah.
So You've talked a bit already about how you find that sort of passion in doing the work and why you do the work. But in particular, I think a lot of people are like, oh, you're thinking about death and how can you bring passion to that? So dig a little deeper on that for us if you can, Michelle. I'd love to hear your
Sure.
perspective.
I think if you ask around to anybody that's had a relative that's died, ask them what happened in the aftermath. And the ones who've had a will went, well, it was kind of sad, but we already knew what was going to happen. And we just followed the lawyer's advice and everything was fine. And the ones who didn't were like, oh my God, we had to go through all grandma's stuff. We didn't know what to do. We didn't even know where her accounts were, blah, blah. And it's just, we didn't know how to, people were arguing about things. Now there's a split in the family because Joe wanted this and Sally wanted that. And now they're not talking to each other. And
Yeah.
it creates a mess. Not only that, but we're starting to figure out, and I'm going to touch on this when I do a recording here shortly today, is the people who are my age and older. We grew up in an age where people stayed in the same town and the same city for their entire life and worked in the same. So we were able to accumulate things, but things were scarce. You got things from family because they were scarce. You got grandma's hutch. You
Yeah.
got the hope chest. You got the family Bible. We live in an era now where people don't stay in the same city. They don't stay in the same job, me either. And we're moving around so much that the younger generation, it's not that they don't love your stuff. It's that they have to move it 90 times
Yeah.
and they don't want to move it. So they're like going, gee, grandma, thanks, but no, I don't want it.
Yeah.
And we're now looking at having to coach downsizing even before people pass away about you need to clean out some of the stuff. If you go into an assisted living, somebody has to deal with all of that. Your young relative who's now not in state is not going to get time off to come and spend 30 days to go through your stuff.
Wow. I think it is so beautiful that you do that as part of your practice. I think so many lawyers approach it with that tunnel vision, right? Here's the law, here's what I do. So it sounds like part of how you bring passion and purpose to what you do is the experience that you're delivering, where it's beyond just the law. You sounds like you offer so much more than that,
Well, and
Michelle.
that's why I'm the attorney with Heart.
Yes, I love it. I think that's fantastic. It's
I
great.
do bring a lot of it into it. There's even digital storage. I mean, there's some things that we are now coming into that people haven't even thought of. What happens when you pass away? Who's going to get into your email? Guess where all your bills go now? To your
Yeah.
email. Who's going to
Yeah.
get into your digital storage for your photos? Who's going to get your videos? How do people get into your life insurance? Because it's all online now.
Yeah.
You need
Yeah.
digital storage as part of that. We need to think about things like that. And now we're looking at cryptocurrency and NFTs. What do you deal with passing those on?
Oh, yeah, good call. My God, and there is that creativity coming through. All those years of wedding planning served you well because
Think of
when
the unexpected.
yeah, but it's interesting because it sounds to me like the creativity helps spark your passion in staying on purpose, and it also allows for a better client experience. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And my clients always say, I didn't even think about that. That is a
Yeah.
problem. Okay. And like, for example, I have a high school buddy. Her son just graduated from high school and he's apprenticing as an electrician, which thank God for tech jobs.
Yeah.
Um, but it suddenly dawned on me, he's 18. People don't, he's really grounded and that's not a joke. He really is a well-matured young man. I realized as I said that was,
It took me a second to catch up.
um, but I realized if he touches something, he could be in the hospital.
Yeah.
He's now 18. Mom can't direct the hospital what to do. She can't even get to talk to the doctor. She can't
That's
get
right.
medical records. So there are 4 documents that even 18-year-olds need to have to allow their parents to be able to help them if something happens to them.
Wow, good call. Geez, you got me thinking here, Michelle. I've got 3 kids all in their early 20s, so I've
Oh,
got some
they need 4 documents.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. That's beautiful. And we're also such a death phobic society. That purposeful approach that you bring helps make this process just more a fact of life. A friend of mine wrote a book called Love Your Life to Death, dealing with
Mm,
this, like address these things in advance. And
yes.
it sounds like you do that in many, many ways. So
Well, and I know people don't like to talk about death, and honestly, nobody does. I don't either. It's kind of a squeamish subject. However, the only way that we're going to have a conversation is if I'm calm and relaxed about talking about death, because if I do that and I'm calm about it, it's going to make you more calmer about sharing your fears about. I mean, my dad wouldn't even make a plan for decades because he was afraid the minute he made one, he'd die. I
yeah.
get it, right? I get it.
I think we're afraid that we'll call it to us if we talk about it.
Exactly
Like
right.
he who shall not be
Paint a
named.
target on your head. Yes. That
Exactly.
doesn't happen, honestly.
No, I'd be interested in your perspective on success. How do you, because I think the practice of law for so long defined success based on a very competitive adversarial model. And it's one of the things I'm on a mission to shift. So I'd be very interested in, how do you define success, AnnMichelle?
Oh my gosh. When I ran my wedding coordinating business, I went to my 10th year high school reunion right as I started that. And people were asking me, was it successful? And I thought, well, and I hemmed and hawed. And then it dawned on me, how many people start their own businesses? Of course I'm successful,
Absolutely. I love it. That's
right?
fantastic.
And as I started meeting customers, my mom said, don't you think you're the expert now? That's another shift in mindset for me too, is when I first started doing weddings and I was meeting with people, I had to remember that I know more than they do.
Yes.
So the phrase on my window for my mirror in the bathroom for the longest time was, I'm the expert. And you say it different ways. I'm the expert. I am the expert. I am the expert. I am the expert. You do that every day. All of a sudden it gets into you and you go to meet that client and you're like, yeah, I'm the expert. I got this.
Nice. Yeah.
It's changing the tape inside.
Yeah, and the power of incantations in doing that, which you just so beautifully illustrated. I think that's fantastic. And so what other is that, I was going to say, what's one thing you attribute your success to? Would that be the number one thing, or what other tips do you have?
Oh my goodness. No, I have, I don't think they called it this back then, but I have what's called grit. So no matter what happens to me, you can knock me down, but I feel like a weeble. I go down, but I don't stay down. I can't let something bad stay bad. I've got to do something good with it.
Yeah. Actually, there's a study on that. I just heard recently, somebody was speaking and they talked about, the number one success factor. And, they had people say what they thought it would be. And when they actually went and researched, it's none of it. It was grit. It ended up coming down to grit, not,
Yeah. Angela Duckworth does a lot on grit,
yeah, beautiful. That's great.
but yeah, I don't quit. Even when I would help claim to fame here, even when I failed the California bar 3 times, I called my brother-in-law and I was like, I'm so mad at myself. And he says, why? And I said, because I just really want to quit. I don't want to do another one. And he's like,
Mhm.
what are you going to do? And I'm going to do another one.
Yeah.
I just like, I can't quit now. I went all in. I don't gamble. I literally went all in on going to law school. I could not pass the bar.
That
So I
is
came up to Washington, which is my
fantastic.
home, and passed the bar on the first try. So
Yeah.
destiny, I wasn't supposed to be there. And hindsight 10 years later, it really was not right for me to be in California, but it took me 3 tries to figure it out.
Yeah, the universe is perfect, they say, and it delivers things play out the way they're supposed to. And I've heard California is one of the most challenging bars, but what a testament to your grit. I love it. You definitely put your money where your mouth is and practice what you preach.
Don't
So,
give up. Yes. My
but
favorite poem in
also,
junior high was a poem called Don't Quit. And it's really been the guiding light in my life.
oh, do you remember it or not going to?
Short end of it is, there's storm clouds, but there's always a sign at the other side. There's always a silver lining. You never know how close you are. You could be really close when it seems so far, and you just can't give up. You just have to. And that was you don't know, if you don't keep trying, you don't know how close you are to the finish line. And that struck
Absolutely.
me. And that's the phrase in that poem that gets me every time. I may get emotional about it
Yeah.
because there are many times I'd like to quit and I just drive through, and I wouldn't be a lawyer today if I quit on the second bar exam or
Yeah.
the third one.
Yeah. And I suspect, and Michelle, from what you're describing, it's precisely that grit that adds to the passion, because this is something you wanted and you went for, and it allows you to show up with gratitude, I would think. Is that fair?
Oh my gosh, I am so thankful every day that I have my law license. I've never been more thrilled to be a number in my life.
That's so good. So when we talk about grit, I mean, for a lot of people, that failing is such a big fear. I'd love to hear, what are some of your biggest fears, and how do you address them and move forward? I mean, obviously
Oh,
grit is part of it, but
hmm um, I I think for most people, when they hit the valley, they think that's where they're going to stay permanently.
mm,
And it's like landscape. You go over a rise, you go down a hill, and you go up a hill and over a rise and down. It's never going to last. You're down right now, but it's never going to be the
mm,
bottom all the time. You are going to come out of it at some point. You make the determination on where the path is from there, though. You can either go down the muddy path and around the valley, or you can go up to the sunny side of the hill. So
mm.
you choose the path from here. You are in complete control.
Oh, that's so good. I like that. Because there's so many things in life we can't control, like external things, but we definitely can control how we choose to react, how we choose to show up.
Hmm.
I think that's great
Hmm.
advice. And I think you've talked a bit about some of your sort of tips on that, but I'd be interested, because you talked about soul sucking before, and that's a word I often use
Yes.
describing, the traditional model, if you will, that very competitive, constant fight mode of practicing. How have you
Mhm.
been able to get away from that, other than picking a practice area that you were able to find a way to bring creativity and passion to?
Um, For me, you have to look at what you're doing as a whole. And for me, everything in my life affects my life. So if something doesn't work, I'm trying to figure out if I can make it work. And if I can't make it work, then I need to figure something else out to do. So my first response is always try and fix it.
Hmm.
But even then, I have time limits on how long it will take me to try and fix it. If it still doesn't fix after a certain length of time, maybe it is time to term out instead of quitting. Maybe it's time to term out on that and go do something else. And so looking at things, even a marriage, of course, I had a marriage fail. You look at what your situation is and you think, should I be doing this? Is this the way my life is supposed to look? And if it's not, you need to be realistic and honest and say, I need to be doing something else. And you need to have the faith that something better is out there. You need to close the door.
It's so good. Expectation, right? Being able to have that expectation. And it's a double whammy because people often talk about aspiration, like have set high aspirations. But I know people who set these high aspirations, but they don't actually have the expectation that they can achieve it. So I think it's the two married together that is the beautiful
Well, you're
combination.
right. And I didn't know when I went to paralegal school, I was going to law school. I went to paralegal school because I wanted to see if after 20 years I could still sit in a classroom. Did I
Yeah.
still have it? Right.
Yeah.
And I discovered, oh, I do. And I loved it. And then I started thinking, oh, I like the law. So I went to paralegal school just as a B plan for working for a
Okay.
telecommunication that was having trouble. So that, and they paid for undergraduates. And so I went back as my second degree, a paralegal degree on top of my undergrad. So I already had that. And so
Yeah.
as I'm doing this as a plan B, I start realizing maybe there's a bigger plan B.
Nice.
And so I ended up staying with the phone company, got the paralegal degree, didn't work in it quite yet because I was still trying to decide if I was going to go to law school. At the time I was deciding that, the company decided they were going to move all the salespeople to either Sioux Falls, South Dakota or Sioux City, Iowa. And I went, yeah, no, going to law school. So I ended up working in collections for 6 months because I was treading water, knowing I was going to quit.
Mm, yeah, that's hard. You know, it's interesting as you say that when you're talking, it's like all these little gold nuggets that show up because it's about being open to opportunity. Yes, have that plan B, but don't be so attached to that particular result that you're not open to other opportunities that may come up that are even better alternatives. So
Correct.
that's
And you
beautiful.
just don't know once, like karma, once you open yourself up to maybe I need to be doing
Yes.
something different and you say, I'm ready for something,
Yeah.
it's going to drop in your lap. You don't even have to go find it. Sometimes it'll just find you.
Yeah. What's that quote? Goeth or whatever. If you take that step, the staircase or the road will come up to meet you. If you take that step into the abyss
Mhm.
with purpose, then things come fall into place for you that wouldn't have otherwise. That's so
Yeah.
great.
I remember when I was deciding to go to law school, here I was, mid 30s and I was like, hi, parents and friends, I want to quit my job, kind of want to jump off this cliff. Please stop me.
Yeah.
And everybody said, go jump. And I just took that small step off that cliff and was hoping there was a mattress at the bottom.
Yeah. And of course, everybody's thinking you're having an early midlife crisis, which I'm sure helped a ton.
Well, no, but my parents know that I do things deliberately. For example,
Yeah.
I bought a vehicle about 6 years ago, and my dad said, "Well, that was kind of spur of the moment." My mom realized I'd been planning and talking to her for a year about what I wanted, and it just so happened that I looked and there's two cars today that meet my requirements. I mean, everything, well, almost
Yeah.
everything. And I said, "Well, I want to go look at them today." My dad's like, "Really? That was kind of spur of the moment." I bought one of the two. The only thing I didn't get was front wheel drive, but I got
Yeah.
the hybrid that's gas and electric. But the only thing that didn't come with is front wheel drive or 4-wheel drive. So that's the one thing I didn't get. But I got a lot of bonuses with it. I got heated seats my mom loves.
It's so funny as you're saying this, the last few things we've talked about, we've covered sort of flexibility, right? Being open, not being so attached to any one result. And what you just described is preparation, so important. And the
Mhm.
reason those keyed in for me is because, I teach the art of negotiation as well. I'm very passionate about reframing how we look at negotiation.
Right.
And a big part of my models are these ideas about being able to show up with, building rapport and bringing empathy to the table,
Mhm.
flexibility, intuition, and trust building, and preparing and with intention. So, since I'm talking about negotiation, I'd love your views on what role the art of negotiation plays in practice as an attorney.
It doesn't necessarily directly relate to what I'm doing. However, there are times when I need to have family members. If the client says, "Hey, I really would like my family member to come with me. And like, great, I don't have a problem with that if you don't have a problem. It's actually
Yeah.
easier if the family member is present. So one, they know I'm not doing anything nefarious.
Yeah.
And two sets of ears are better than one set.
Yeah.
And so the child may be hearing something that the client didn't hear,
Yeah.
or maybe addressing something. Oh, what about this retirement plan that you had? Or, oh, what are we going to do about grandpa's boat now? And those are kind of issues that they can talk with amongst themselves. So it gets somebody else in the picture. But the other part of it that's so great is in doing weddings, I had to negotiate between family members. Well, what if this happens? What if that
Yeah.
happens? Okay, if you and divorced parents are negotiating, divorced parents are a riot.
Oh.
Can we have this picture with the bride and groom and mom and dad, not their spouses? Is that okay?
Yeah.
So drawing on that even before I got to law school was great, because as I got into law school and got into doing auto accident cases, we're negotiating with adjusters all the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes they like to drag it out. And I had some adjusters I had some really good rapport with that I would call up and go, hi, can we just cut to the chase? Here's my number. What's yours?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they would give it to me. I said, great, let me go talk to the client, and call them back 15 minutes later and say, hey, we got a deal.
Yeah.
Because their number was higher than we expected. Right. I love it.
Yeah.
And the other is my client wants this, but they also want an apology.
Mm.
Well, that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. My client's willing to take this little less number, but they want an apology. Let me go ask. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. So
All they
important.
want, a lot of people just want an apology. They just want to be heard.
They want to be seen, heard, and valued or understood. Absolutely. And it's
Correct.
interesting to me as you're describing the wedding planning. Again, so much of that has come and you're able to apply it in your
Oh yeah.
practice as a lawyer. But even those negotiations as a wedding planner, dealing with those challenging family dynamics are, I would think, a pretty huge issue in estate law as well, where so much of it is about those navigating, which is a form of negotiation, right? Whether you're negotiating with
Oh yeah.
yourself, your kids, your intimate partner, and navigating those challenging family circumstances.
Well, let's throw another wrinkle in there. Let's talk about blended families. You have
Yes.
a couple that's been married and they have kids, and then they get a divorce, and then they each go on to have more kids. Your new spouses cannot unfairly expect your estate plan now to be all about you and their kids
Yeah.
together. It's about you and all of your kids.
Yeah.
And the spouses need to understand that it's a give and take. Sure, all of your stuff is going to go to your kids, but not all of his stuff is going to go to your kids. They're
Yeah.
going to go to his kids too.
Yeah.
And so there's a big negotiation going on there again. So we eliminate family conflict.
Yeah. No, so important. I love that. And what are some things that you do to help maintain like, it's obvious you came with passion, you bring it. What are some things you do to keep maintaining that passion for your practice, Michelle?
Oh, well, I've only been doing estate planning for a little while, but I'll tell you, it's going to be something I'm going to do for a long time. I love it. I love being
Nice.
able, every client's different. So I'm trying to talk to other estate planning attorneys and talk to them about plans that they know that have failed, or plans that they know that have succeeded. And one of the ones that I'm using now is a friend of mine was hired on to finish up a probate for a lady who died. I think she was 94. And her estate at the time she died was about 2.5 million. So not a small chunk of change.
Yeah.
But she and her husband had thought long ago about making a plan, which is another reason why you need to update plans.
Yeah.
Back when they were 30s or 40-year old. So the plan has been like 60 years old now.
Yes.
So they named a personal representative, which was her best friend. They had one child between them. In the ensuing years, her husband died. She did not update her plan.
Of course.
Not necessary. Honestly,
Yeah.
that's kind of depending on what you have and how it was written. But then her personal representative died.
Yeah.
No update on the will.
Yeah.
And then her only child died with no children. That
Oh,
definitely
wow.
required an update on the will.
Yeah.
So when her will went to probate, the court required the attorneys to hire a genealogist to find her relatives that she'd never
Wow.
met, and then hire a private investigator to find out which one of those were still alive. There are 34 people getting over $30,000 each. None of them knew her, and none of them can even pronounce her name.
Wow.
I think
Gosh.
for me, I think I might want my money to go to charity rather than
Yeah.
almost honestly total strangers I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. See the things, the ripple effects that we were talking about earlier that you don't think about. And now you've got me thinking, because years ago I got this call. Somebody was adamant, said it's a very urgent matter for me, but they were wanting to me to give some personal information to confirm I was who I said I was, which I refused to do over the phone. So who knows? Maybe I had some relative and I was on the
Could have.
genealogy list. You never know.
You could
So
have.
let me ask you, I can't believe how fast time is going. This has been such
I
an
know.
interesting conversation. What do you know now that you wish you knew when you first started, and how would it have helped you?
Oh my goodness. I think the biggest thing is keep fighting to find mentors. I am still not in a position where I think a mentor is not required for me.
Right.
There's so many people I could learn from. And if I'm willing to hand out advice to other people about how to prevent mistakes, I better go find somebody who can help me prevent mistakes.
Yeah.
Um, the next generation is definitely worth investing in. They are our future. They're going to be the ones helping us through all this process. So we do need to make sure that they understand the world that they're being given and the opportunities they're being given.
Yeah.
We need to teach them how to be okay with failure and to be okay with imperfection. We don't need to be perfect to be good at what we're doing. And I think that as we watch them mature, I think we're going to be surprised at what they can accomplish if we give them a chance.
Oh, what a beautiful answer. I don't dare ask another question after that. That was such a great note to end on. And so great that you touched on that piece about us also needing mentors, because I don't care what stage of life you're at, how accomplished you are, how much experience you have, if we're not continuing to come from a growth mindset, to be looking to expand, I think it's one of the most important ways that we continue to grow and we can stay on purpose and we can continue to be passionate. And kudos to you, AnnMichelle. You certainly have exemplified all of that in how you live your life, and it sounds like how you are bringing your practice. So thanks so much for joining us here today. This has been so, so valuable. Loved
Thanks for
having you.
having me.
It's been great. So for those of you out there listening, I want you to make sure to check and learn more about AnnMichelle as well. So make sure that you can check out, and we will also be sure to put those in the show notes for you. But make sure you check out. You can find her on her website and we'll get those in the show notes for you. LinkedIn as well, and Facebook, all great places that you can find out a little bit more about AnnMichelle. And I'm sure you have all just got loads of value from this episode. We've dug deep and given you lots of tips and tools on how to be able to bring practice, better practice and purpose into your practice. So if you haven't already subscribed for this podcast, please make sure to do so and share it with anyone that you think could get some value from the message. And frankly, if you're practicing law out there, I'd suggest you share it with everybody, because we can all do with finding more purpose and more attention to practicing with purpose and bringing that, rekindling that passion. And also make sure to check out my Art of Feminine Negotiation podcast as well, if you have not ever checked that out. Loads of nuggets about how you can negotiate a better life, because after all of life is a negotiation. And that is a wrap for this episode. So until next time, go forth and find ways that you can practice on purpose and find a better way to practice so that you can rekindle your passion and make a difference in the world. Because let's face it, most of us go to the practice of law because we want to make a difference in the world. So find a way that you can negotiate your best life on your terms. See you next time.